Hey friend, I have painted for over 10 years, thousands of paintings, and I wanted to share with you the 4 things that painting thousands of painting over 10 years has taught me. So the first thing that painting for over 10 years and painting thousands of paintings has taught me is, number 1, there's usually always something you can do to fix something. A lot of beginners, even more advanced artists or intermediate artists also, throw in the towel way too soon. I always like to recommend to maybe take a pause or a break to get fresh eyes, maybe get a sip of water or a snack and come back to something and really assess how it's going. Taking a step back from your paintings does wonders to how you're feeling about something, or if you need to make any tweaks or changes. But if you're feeling like a painting is getting way ahead of you, or it's starting to look blah or muddy or whatever, and you're just not liking it and you're ready to crumple it up and throw it in the trash, I want you to halt a little bit, pause, because usually there's something that you can do to fix it. That could be layering on thicker paint that's more opaque so that you can cover up the layers underneath. That's the if it's a total disaster and you need to cover it up type of method. Or if you need to add water and lift color, you can always, especially with your damp, still wet color on your paper, you can always add a little bit more water and lift it up with a clean paper towel, a Q-tip, or a dry, clean brush. So there's always ways that you can fix your painting. So patience, this is one of my 4 things, but patience is a virtue. So that will lead me into my second one, which is patience is a virtue. Have patience with yourself at any skill level. Painting requires patience. So if you're learning something that's a little bit slightly above your skill level, or if it's really far ahead of your skill level, or it's something that you've painted 100 times, it still is going to require, painting requires some level of patience. Drying time, obviously with watercolor, layering, and making sure that sometimes it's really messy and really just not cute in the beginning stages of painting. And so you have to develop that skill of knowing that it can be made better over time with patience. So my first thing that I've learned over the last 10 years of painting is there's usually always something that you can do to fix a painting, even no matter how wonky it gets. There's usually something you can do to fix it. Second is patience is a virtue. And then my third thing that I've learned after painting thousands of paintings over 10 years is butter and cream consistencies are your best friends. Most watercolor artists never ever get the full depth out of watercolor that you can get when you get that cream and butter consistency. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I have a full video called the tea to butter exercise, tea to butter, and those creamy and buttery consistencies that you can get with adding a lot more pigment to water ratio, where it's literally really creamy and thick, are where the depth and beautiful aspects of water really come out and shine. Yes, watery, more transparent layers in watercolor are super important. It's how you build depth and you layer light to dark usually. But most beginners, especially, even more advanced painters as well with watercolor, never really access the full depth of watercolor in the creamy and buttery consistencies. I've taught hundreds of classes in watercolor in person, obviously also online. I've taught thousands and thousands of students. I've done in-person retreats, and this is the number one thing that most of my in-person students take away is like, wow, I've never ever been able to really get that consistency down, or I was only in the milk or coffee range. I never got the full depth of my pigments using a lot more pigment than water in my consistencies. So butter and cream are where it's at. Highly recommend checking out the tea to butter exercise video on my YouTube channel. Again, it's totally free, so check it out. So that is number 3. And then my 4th and final thing that I have learned after painting for over 10 years and thousands of paintings under my belt is to always take a step back. I mentioned this a little bit earlier because they all kind of intertwine with each other, but always take a step back. When we're so zoomed in and focused on what we're painting, it kind of always looks a little weird and wonky up close than if you just take like 5 feet step back, or even 1 foot step back from what you're painting, and you start to see the full scene, the composition, how the colors are laying out, if there's balance, if there's anything that you need to add, or if the colors are working together or not. It's a very helpful, super simple tool of just stepping back from what you're painting and really assessing where everything is landing and if it's working together or not, and what tweaks you need to make or maybe edit and change for future paintings if you can't fix it for the current painting. It always gives you a broader, obviously, perspective on what you're painting when you take a step back. So those are my 4 lessons that I've learned over the past 10 years of being a professional artist and painting thousands and thousands of paintings in watercolor. I also have a free 40-page ebook called The Complete Beginner's Guide to Watercolor. Like I said, it's completely free, and we'll link it here in the description of this video. It's one of my favorite resources. It's so helpful for any level of artist, any level of watercolor painter, whether you're just starting or you need to brush up on some techniques. I cover supplies, color theory, and a bunch of tutorials in there. And there's also a lot of fun QR codes inside the ebook that will link out to YouTube videos that I've done on certain tutorials and things like that. So make sure you check out that resource. I also have an online course called The Art Within, which helps you go over the foundations of sketching, lines and curves, how to understand shape and form and depth and shading and all the things, brush technique with watercolor, color theory and harmonies. And then I also talk about flow state and how to tap into flow state to create your best work and develop your style as an artist. So if you're interested in that, we will also link to that course below. I hope you check it out because it's wonderful. And as always, thank you so much for watching these videos, and I'll see you in the next one.